How about that dance?
I gotta be really drunk to dance when it's almost empty like this. Think you could buy me another drink?
Anything you want?
You're so cool, JC. I'm so glad I met you.
How about that dance?
Deus Ex is a game that is many different things to many different people. To me, it was a game that I remember my stepdad playing, but never really getting a chance to play it myself. As I grew older, I'd occasionally come back to give this game a go, but would never make it past the first level or so. I found the systems clunky and difficult to understand. I think the first time I would have played this game would have been around age 10 or 11, where I would have rented it from good old Blockbuster on the PS2. This kind of game just really didn't make sense to me as a kid. I'm not sure on the specifics, but until playing it for this review, I don't really remember anything about the game except for the Statue of Liberty, and that's the first mission. I don't remember what kind of games I was into as a kid either. I think I was just into games. I would rent 1 or 2 a week from Blockbuster and just pick whatever looked good on the shelf. I don't think I was a big fan of this game though. The vague remembrance of the Statue of Liberty would persist in my mind for years to come. Growing up, I was a pretty big game FAQs forum hound. I'd look up reviews and guides while using the forums as a way to see what was hip in the gaming world outside of what magazines had to offer me. I would eventually learn of the reverence people had for this game, and would only light a desire in me to try and enjoy it. Sometimes when I wonder what to play, I look at top 10, top 100, top whatever lists to see what games have made a splash in people's minds. Deus Ex is a game that appears consistently in these lists. I would say I've probably installed Deus Ex 3 times in my life, in an attempt to progress past the first level, but I wouldn't succeed. I wasn't able to, or didn't have the patience to figure out how to do the stealth properly. Spoiled by more modern games which would visualize alert levels, not only in the game world, but through its HUD too. My bullets weren't hitting either, and to be honest, I would just keep dying. Deus Ex presents itself like a shooter, and I was most likely trying to play it the same way I would have played Half-Life or Doom. This was an incorrect way to approach the game, but I recently listened to a podcast that reignited the desire to play, and after my Planescape Torment review, I realized that in these times of microtransactions and creatively unimaginative AAA titles, it's quite refreshing to go back to the 2 decades to a game that is both huge in narrative and gameplay, while being pretty no bullshit in terms of the content it throws at you. This is a game that had me from start to finish, but I was pretty satisfied with the amount of game I had played by the time the credits had rolled. Hello everyone, my name is Stone Skeleton, and this is my review of Deus Ex. Deus Ex is a blend of stealth, first-person shooting, RPG systems, and adventure game stuff, developed by Ion Studios in 2000. You play as Augmented Superman, JC Denton. JC's favourite hobbies are stacking boxes, flushing toilets, and busting into the women's bathrooms. JC is a bit of a creep to be honest, but more on that later. Deus Ex is interesting because of the aforementioned blending of genres, allowing for multiple different playstyles. Stealth, combat, hackerman are all valid styles of play, and Deus Ex rather expertly allows for all of them. It very narrowly avoids the trap of boss battles and extended combat sequences, but I'd still probably say it's pretty wise to level up a combat skill or 2. The RPG systems in Deus Ex are incredibly important to the way you will want to play the game. It is almost pointless trying to use a skill that you are untrained in. If you shoot while untrained with your weapon type, it'll take a long time for you to steady your aim, and if you do, it's still going to spray everywhere, wasting your precious ammo. If you're untrained at computers, you'll still be able to log into people's computers, though only for a short amount of time, of which if you are unable to log out and complete your task, it'll sound an alarm. If you're untrained with lockpicks, you may still be able to pick the locks, but it will require an unreasonably high amount of lockpicks to get anywhere. But what if you upgraded the weapon you were untrained with mods found throughout the world? What if you just found the password to the computer with those saucy emails? What if you just blew up the goddamn door? You know what, fuck that. What if you just upgraded your augmented leg so you could jump over the fence and go through the hatch in the roof? I know it just seems like I said what if a lot, but it's the question at the very heart of Deus Ex's game design. The levels aren't the star here, in fact they're usually incredibly dry. What they do excel at is the minute-to-minute play. I never came across a problem in Deus Ex that there wasn't a second solution for. Scavenging for supplies is a pretty key part of Deus Ex's gameplay loop. For example, there may be items hidden inside lockers, inside vents, or on top of geometry in the game. The human hoovers out there will have a good time with this game, but others may struggle with supplies. Deus Ex has an inventory management mechanic, meaning you will not be able to pick up everything you see without making those tough choices. This can feel disempowering, as sometimes these tough choices will lock you into a solution. You may be skilled in electronics and lockpicking, but being completely out of the required tools. This leaves you with two options: stealth or combat. This can feel pretty bad sometimes, but it's the game's way of trying to bring out the player's resourcefulness, to take charge of the situation, similar to how the player character would. This in turn, however, leads to moments of utter empowerment. It's when the chips are down and you're cursing the game for soft locking you out of your solution of choice that, like the player character, you investigate possible other solutions. You might find the solution on your own and feel intelligent for doing so, or you might come up completely empty-handed and, like me on a few occasions, have to look up a guide. For those times when you do look up a solution with a guide, you will feel pretty silly. My example of this is in the sewer, where you have two possible tunnels to go down. One is full of steam pipes, which will tear you up pretty quickly, and the other tunnel containing a set of lasers that when tripped will activate some turrets and blast your ass away. My usual way of taking care of turrets was explosives, of which I was completely out of. I didn't have enough energy to heal through the damage of the steam, so I really had to get creative to solve the problem. My first solution was to take some of the boxes I found and try and block the steam from hitting me. This being a game from 2000 though, this solution didn't really pan out. My other solution was to try and block the lasers with a box. While flawed in hindsight, I think my internal logic was that as long as no enemies go through the lasers, it should be all good. Neither solution worked, so to save myself from getting frustrated and just quitting, I looked at a guide. The correct solution, for those without a hazmat suit to protect them from the steam or multi-tools to switch off the lasers, would have been to stack boxes and jump over. My overthinking got the absolute better of me in this case. It could be viewed that I had solutions that the game wasn't quite ready to accept, but I should have at least considered stacking the damn boxes before thinking I could use said box to block steam in a game from 2000. Exploration is usually pretty fantastic in Deus Ex. When I'd enter a new level, I'd get a wave of feeling overwhelmed, as they are usually quite large, but it also gives me a little feeling of fatigue. This is because not only are the levels quite large, taking a while to explore and catch your footing, but the texture work is pretty damn bland. The levels are laid out in ways that make sense. For example, the Statue of Liberty mission having you eventually climb to the statue in a way that feels cohesive, the building as large as it appears from the outside as it is in the inside. Another example is the Catacombs of France, which is a huge area to explore containing multiple World War II era bunkers. The problem with this comes from the samey texture work, making areas feel similar to one another, resulting in backtracking and losing your sense of direction. I feel this is why there's an inclusion of a map that you can view in your menu for particularly large or dense areas. A cool little detail is that you're able to write your own notes on the maps that you're given. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about this until after I'd completed the game. Joke's on me. Something else that hurts the exploration a little for me is an item called the keyring. Throughout levels you will stumble onto these things called nano keys for unlocking doors around the level. After you pick them up, you get a little notification, key for so-and-so's apartment has been added to your keyring, and it'll be then ready for you to use from the keyring item. That's when my problem comes in. You need to actually take the keyring out and try it on doors. Maybe I play games wrong, maybe you can relate, but sometimes I don't even realize I picked up a nano key and would scour the level for a way to unlock a door, only to find out that it was on my nano key. I know this sounds small, but I don't think there is any modern game that would enforce this kind of trial and error on key items. This isn't to knock the game as much as it is to forewarn others that 9 times out of 10, if you can't figure out where to go next and you've exhausted your options, you probably picked up a nano key 45 minutes ago and forgot all about it. There is one example in particular where this basically ruined my night and forced me to resort to a guide. I have a misguided pride about not using guides when possible, but as I grow older, the more I realize that I don't play video games to get stumped on puzzles. So if something is causing me actual grief, but I, for the most part, enjoy the game, I figure I should just use a guide. More often than not, the solution was right under my nose, but I'd be stuck so long I can no longer see the forest from the trees. While I may sound a little bit negative here, not having an explicit map or GPS system encourages you to really look into the nooks and crannies for other solutions. This is a game that rewards you for your exploration with cool story beats and by the more binary reward of extra XP. As a bit of a companion issue to this, Deus Ex has a fantastic journal system. Although it lacks a search bar, it keeps track of all conversations, data cubes, emails that you find in the world. What the game doesn't do is remind you of the relevant codes that you have for a level. So for instance, you find a lock keypad, there's probably about a 50-50 chance that I'd remember that I already had found the code, which then I'd have to scroll through my logs and try to match them up with the door or the computer I was working with. This is usually fine with 4-digit codes, but I had a lot of difficulty remembering people's usernames and passwords that I'd usually find on the data cubes. But that was okay, because I spec'd my character in computers and would still be able to access them, albeit on a time limit. Again, this is the developers taking into account multiple playstyles. For me personally, I didn't really want to fiddle through the menus, and basically just skipped a lot of the detective work to find which code goes to which door, which computer, and in that sense I made the conscious trade with the game, that I can skip certain aspects, but in the exchange for my character is weaker overall. The player that does enjoy the adventure game aspects of Deus Ex is a more diligent note-taker than I, will be able to skip having computer skills completely, vested however they please. Deus Ex is a game of trade-offs and compromises, which is what makes it such an engaging experience to begin with. The game splits its play between 2 distinct modes, action and adventure, at different times and blending them to different extents. The plot rolls pretty slow at the beginning, but there is a lot of world building. In comparison to the back half of the game moves the plot along a lot quicker, but is more action orientated. The adventure side of the game has you interacting with the NPCs and the world to give you a better grasp on your objective, which you will solely need unless you are a purely combat-focused character. For example, the second mission has you going into Hell's Kitchen, of which the majority of the level is friendly to you. It's only in the warehouse where the terrorists have commandeered a generator which is powering an EMP field, preventing another operation from taking place. You gather information from NPCs, learning about the world and your objective in the process. At one point you'll meet a character who basically lays out the plot of the entire game for you, but JC, the ever-skeptic, isn't having a bar of it. Because it's at a bar. A lot of the joy of Deus Ex comes from interacting with the inhabitants of this world, helping them with their problems and just listening to what they have to say. The game is highly effective at rolling in level information into these side conversations you have. From a design sense, this is an innovative way to break out of the red, blue, green key system that was still commonplace in a lot of first-person shooters. Giving in-game context to why these doors may be locked, sometimes going as far as letting the Inquisitor find out why it was locked and who set the passcode. I absolutely love the interactions had in this game. The voice acting is a super mixed bag, ranging from pretty good with characters like Manderley and Paul.
It's gradually falling back. You'll have to deal with them first.
And you be ready, Paul. When the power drops, go in and go in hard.
I'll use my discretion.
To just awful. When it is awful, though, it usually isn't for long and you don't have to talk to everybody. There are a few things that struck me as just being wonderful, though. One of which being the voice acting for JC himself. It is comically bad, which is funny because it's the same voice actor as Paul, who gives a generally pretty great performance.
Alright, I killed your boss. You mean... He's out of the picture. I'd advise you not to hang around too long. Now how about getting me into the labs?
JC is kind of like if Hitman and Geralt got together and had a baby. He's short and to the point, speaking with little emotion in this high-pants, fast-talking kind of rhythm. It's just delightful, and watching JC interact with just about anyone puts a smile on my dial. The other character that stands out, or characters, are the absolutely horrific children you'll find out in the world. In Deus Ex, children are often a font of information, and for the exchange of a little soy food, we'll be happy to divulge it.
How does a little boy get mixed up with the NSF?
I just wanted to find some food, but they didn't have any. And then they started shooting at the police. Got some?
You can have this soy food.
You're cool.
Glad I could help.
There are some, pretty cringe accents though. Most famously in the Hong Kong level, and to a less remembered degree, the levels in France.
I told you, bad people around here.
Go.
I am your new watchman.
You stole 100 credits from me.
The Dragonhead said I am your watchman.
I can somewhat empathize with what the devs were going for here, as the recent Hitman trilogy caught some flack for having all the characters speak in, for the most part, white English-speaking countries like Americanese or British, no matter where the mission was located. What we have here in Deus Ex probably isn't the solution to giving globe-trotting missions local flavour. What we have here is just straight stereotypes, and it may have flown in 2000, but it might be a bit more offensive with 2023 sensibilities. That said, I feel as though, again, this was purely the voice director's misguided attempt at adding flavour to the different regions you'll be adventuring in. I kind of feel that the voice acting budget wasn't that big of a priority, and the team really tried their best, with mixed results that end up becoming greater than the sum of its parts. The combat in Deus Ex is another mixed bag. It's functional. The way that it works is the more experience points you put into a given weapon type, the quicker you'll be able to steady your aim and reload the weapon. If you are untrained, it will take a long time to steady your aim. Even once it's focused, you're not guaranteed to hit your target. This could lead to a lot of people getting a similar feeling to Morrowind, a game that at the very beginning, when you attacked an enemy, it wasn't a guaranteed hit, even if you were physically connecting. It wouldn't lose health, but it's not quite as pronounced here in Deus Ex. To make the most out of combat in Deus Ex and to avoid a lot of frustration, try to make sure you're only operating within your skills. I found myself out of ammo for my chosen weapon quite often, and would occasionally attempt to use different means to make it out alive. But explosive is kind of the only weapons I would attempt to use untrained. Remind yourself that stealth is always an option. On the stealth side of the fence, again, this is functional. The enemies you face are pretty dumb and won't search very far for you. In fact, generally can be helpful to get spotted, as enemies will try and run to sound the alarm, giving you a few moments to run up behind them and try and headshot them with your chosen melee weapon. For the majority of my playthrough, I tried to be a non-lethal pistol wheeler, but it became clear to me that pretty quickly that unless you already know the levels and escape routes, you may need to break some eggs.
Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time?
At around the halfway point of the game, you'll be gifted a sword weapon, which is obscenely broken, killing most humanoid enemies with 1 or 2 hits. From that point on, my go-to weapons were purely the sword and the rocket launcher. In a sense, this weapon is pretty game-breaking, but you're not obligated to use it at any point, and for me, it was just the tipping point on the power progression scale. I felt that it came right at the right time, as I'd finally started to grasp the systems of the game. I became the hunter rather than the hunted. As for music, I don't really have too much to say besides that it's pretty good and is quite earwormy. As I write this script, I'm listening to the soundtrack, and it's doing a great job at triggering memories and the good times in my playthrough, which to me is the hallmark of an effective video game soundtrack. Finally, we're onto the story of Deus Ex, which is pretty interesting and unique for the time period. It even has some eerie Simpsons predicted it moments. Notably that the game was released in 2000, so while they had rendered the World Trade Centers in the game, a glitch made it so the towers didn't appear in the city skyline, which is pretty damn eerie. The other weird accidental prediction is the pandemic of the Grey Death, a disease that withers all away who contract it, and a big pharmaceutical company is using its influence as a manufacturer of the vaccines to nefarious ends. In this section, I'm going to try and give a brief overview of the story and be pretty willy-nilly with spoilers, so if you want to avoid that, go to this section here. The opening cutscene shows two men talking in a large room of red and black, discussing plans of God knows what. It's confusing, and a lot of proper nouns are dropped onto you with no context. After this cutscene, you are given control of your character and dropped onto the dock for your first mission. As mentioned earlier, you play as JC Denton, an augmented super soldier about to go on his first mission for US anti-terror agency UNATCO. A terrorist cell called the NSF has taken over the Statue of Liberty, for which whatever reason is also where UNATCO headquarters is located. Unbeknown to the player, the head of UNATCO has specifically told his forces not to engage the enemy and let JC take care of this on his own ability. It is essentially a test of your skill, with higher-ups wanting to see how you would take care of this situation. You'll do some general Deus Exing, which I'll probably use as a verb from here. Stacking crates, unlocking doors, and knocking out guards in what is probably one of the best levels in the game in terms of player freedom. Eventually you'll make it to the NSF leader, who surrenders straight away, leaving you the option to take him out or not. If you choose to continue talking to him, he'll begin to make some oddly convincing points about real-life conspiracies. Mixing in real-life conspiracy into a video game like this just works so bloody well. After the mission, you'll be sent to the base to get a debriefing and receive your next mission. But as it is your first day on the job, you can do other things like meet your co-workers and check out your office. Having an entirely non-combat hub area is pretty refreshing, especially in a shooter from 2000. When it comes time for your debriefing, you go past some augmented men in black, telling you to keep your head down and that your time will come. In a pretty cool developer sort of everything moment, if you happen to bust into the woman's bathroom at UNATCO HQ, your boss will actually tell you off for it during your debriefing.
The bonus for rescuing Agent Herman goes to one of the troopers, though. I'm sure you understand.
Thank you, sir.
By the way, Denton, stay out of the ladies' restroom. That kind of activity embarrasses the agency more than it does you.
Neato. JC's a pervert. The very fact there are things in this game that you can do that aren't just the mission is a hallmark of the immersive sim genre. That and the flushing of toilets. I was on a mission to flush every toilet in the game, no matter how dangerous the area.
Why are you locked in the bathroom?
The first half of the game is really about world building, more than anything else. You're not too hampered by too much save the world kind of stuff, more just taking things on a mission by mission basis and soaking it all in. The game drops countless hints and nouns at you in perfect conspiratorial themed fashion, won't have much of a meaning to you until the very end. Something about Deus Ex is that for the most part, the plot has already happened, and you don't really take an active role in it until about halfway through. As I mentioned earlier, there is just that character who gives you pretty much the whole plot of the game. He isn't a fortune teller, it's just that he's seen things, and he isn't a crazy drunk. Eventually you learn that your brother Paul is actually working for the quote-unquote terrorist organization, the NSF, and tells you the truth about UNATCO. That it's actually a front being controlled by the head of FEMA, Walter Simons, who is a puppet for an offshoot of the Illuminati called the Majestic 12. That's right, not only is the Illuminati real, but it has been largely crushed by former members who went to form a group called the Majestic 12. This is the beginning of the real plot of Deus Ex, which is largely an unraveling of conspiracy after conspiracy, and it goes all the way to the top. Your job is to find a man named Tracer Tong and kill him, but your pilot Jock has other ideas. He says instead of taking you to Hong Kong, you're going back to Hell's Kitchen to save Paul. Once you've found Paul and discussed that you're both going to go to Hong Kong to see Tong, Majestic 12 storms the building with men in black and troopers. Depending on how you handle the situation, Paul can either live or die. I managed to keep him alive, but on my way out was captured by one of our ex-colleagues. You wake in a jail with a mysterious voice called Daedalus saying that he can get you out of your cell. This ends up being a cool retelling of the UNATCO office that you become accustomed to throughout the game. Depending on if Paul lives or dies, you either have to rescue him or recover his corpse as proof to this Daedalus that you're for real. Men in black, lizard monsters, little grey men, they're all here, baby. It's such a delightful romp through these real-life conspiracies wrapped in a kind of spy thriller. After escaping New York to Hong Kong, it is then revealed to you that you and Paul are less brothers and more just clones of one another. Bred specifically to further M12, or Majestic 12, I'm going to call him M12 now, M12's goals. Also revealed is that both you and Paul are installed with kill switches that when activated will kill you in 24 hours. Simons has just activated them. Your objective in Hong Kong is to contact Tracer Tong, who Paul thinks will be able to deactivate the kill switch. M12 is on your case now though, going as far to disable your black copter on the way into Hong Kong. Hong Kong stands as an interesting mission because for the most part it is another non-combat area. After doing a bit of work and bringing peace to the warring triad gangs, you'll be put into contact with Tracer Tong, who is able to deactivate your kill switch. Tracer is then able to is close to being able to cure the Grey Death, the disease which is killing large swathes of the population, and needs you to break into a large pharmacy land of Page Industries to complete the vaccine. From the top, it looks like your normal pharmacy headquarters. You know, we've all been there. But after assassinating a disgruntled employee's boss for him, you get access to the juicy underground lab. Getting off the elevator and you immediately recognize this room. It's the room where who we now know to be Walter Simons is talking about how we will soon know to be Bob Page and discussing plans. After getting what we need and getting back to Tracer Tong, we are then off to Paris to meet an Illuminati member who is working against Majestic 12. You will be contacted by another mysterious voice named Icarus. At this point, it's been deduced that these voices are AI, created by the government and designed to administrate different parts of society. After a few levels of just some general Deus Exing, we reach the final level of Area 51. This is the base of M12's power, and its leader Bob Page has found a way to fuse himself with the AIs and the very fabric of global communications. Obviously, he's got to go, but we have a few different ways to handle it. One ending has us destroying Area 51, ending global communications and bringing humanity to a new dark age. Another has us killing Bob Page, but leaving the grid up, becoming a leader of the New World Order that will shape this benevolently from the shadows, a new Illuminati. The third and final ending choice has us taking Bob Page's place and fusing with the AI ourselves. There is no good ending / bad ending scenario here, all having their pros and cons. In fact, none of them felt very good to have to choose between, but it was clear something had to be done. While this choice only affects the very ending moments of the game, it is powerful in the way that it will be the last thing you do before the credits. Personally, I chose to fuse with the AI because that's just badass. There's a metric shit ton that I neglected to cover in this plot summary, but the general gist of it is there, and I hope that I've intrigued you enough to see the rest for yourself. I had such a feeling of satisfaction seeing the credits here. The game was the perfect length.
We have grown, but there is still much to be done. Many that live in darkness that must be shown the way, for it is the dawning of a new day.
Not leaving me wanting more, but instead ending at just the right time. If it went any longer, I would have become fatigued with some of the more filler military base missions towards the end. And if it were any shorter, it wouldn't have felt as much of an adventure. Even in 2023, Deus Ex holds up. It is a video game in a purer form than a lot of what is on offer today, although perhaps not as quote-unquote fun. It respects you and your time, and I implore anyone to give it a go and experience one of the granddaddies of the immersive sim genre. I had a tough time this month trying to actually finish a game. Having started both Persona 5 and Pathfinder Kingmaker, playing around 25 hours each and just falling off. This game took me about 25-30 hours to complete, so maybe that is where my attention span just is at the moment. Any games that you'd like to see, any experiences with Deus Ex you'd like to share, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching. Be well, y'all.